This is a test. This is a test at 6:16. All right, this is the second test at 6:17. 6:17.
Oh, we're using QuickBooks for a lot more than accounting.
Really? What about compliance?
HR rules, audit trails, 401k compliance. Plus, it can file and pay our payroll taxes for us. If we ever do get a fine, QuickBooks covers it.
Well, I need Salesforce integration.
QuickBooks works with Salesforce.
Check 3. Test 3. Test 4. Test 4 at 6:18.
Hello.
I don't want you to hold it down. Okay?
Test 5. This is test 5.
No, not first.
Hello. Hello.
'Cause I don't want you to be jumping back.
Test 7. Test 7.
looks like a bear squatch.
Dad, what's a bear squatch?
It's a cross between a bear and a It's made up. He's usually sleeping.
He'll never sleep again.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We will call this work session to order. Mrs. Henry, if you could call the roll.
Ms. Hubbard? Here. Ms. Hogan? Ms. Saunier? Ms. Vowell?
Here.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Ms. Cousins?
Present.
Mr. Davis?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin, I did want to acknowledge that we do have a special guest in the audience, Dr. Keisha Scarlett, who will be the incoming superintendent starting July 1st, 2023, is here visiting this week. So we certainly want to welcome Dr. Scarlett to her first full week here in St. Louis to get to know the surroundings and get to know some of the people. We want to thank Seattle Public Schools for graciously allowing her some time to slowly come and meet us before we start full on July 1st. So everyone, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Keisha Scarlett. Dr. Williams.
Good evening, everyone. So continuing our spirit of excellence this evening, we have two student scholars performing Lift Every Voice and Sing by James Weldon Johnson. Nicole Smith is a 12-year-old student. She's a 7th grader at Lionel Blow Academy. She likes reading and dancing. Nicole wants to be a doctor when she grows up. We also have Journey Davis. She's a 13-year-old, 7th grade student at Lionel Blow. She loves basketball and mathematics. Journey wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up. And accompanying our students this evening on guitar is their music teacher, Mr. Mark Clark. So we want to welcome our student scholars this evening to perform Lift Every Voice and Sing. I do want to take a moment to thank Principal Dr. Ingrid Ascali and Assistant Principal Mr. Timothy Craig for encouraging our scholars to demonstrate and show their talents here at the board meeting this evening. So let me welcome Journey and Nicole.
Hi, my name's Nicole.
My name's Journey
And today we're going to sing Lift Every Voice and Sing
by James Weldon Johnson.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory has won. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory on. Let us march on till victory has won.
Once again, thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Journey. We appreciate both of you this evening. Thank you, Mr. Clark, for being here. I want to take a moment and just thank Mrs. Kay Harrelson. She has done a phenomenal job of just ensuring that we have talent each board meeting, and I want to thank her for her diligence. And I also would be remiss if I didn't take a moment and thank Dr. Letitia Smith. They have both worked tirelessly to ensure that we have talent. We are a district full of talented scholars, 19,000 of them. And so thank you for every board meeting ensuring that we can demonstrate what we have here, our best resource, our children here in the St. Louis Public Schools. So thank you. Once again, let's give them a rousing round of applause. It's with a heavy heart that this evening I ask us to take a moment of silence to remember the precious lives lost in the recent tragic shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. So I'm going to ask all of us to just take a moment of silence. Thank you. President Davis.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. I did just want to add a couple of things. I'll speak more about our board report, but this weekend on Friday, I'll be speaking at a conference along with John McDonald from the Missouri School Board Association, School Safety Institute, and other school board members at a school board conference relating to how school boards react to school shootings. I really don't want to do it. I feel compelled to do it. I feel compelled to share our experiences with other school boards because it seems to be an inevitability that other school boards will be dealing with a school shooting. Since October 24th of last year, there have been 24 school shootings with an injury or death. Nashville was the 24th since October 24th last year. That day, I hoped it would never happen to anyone again, but we knew it would, and it has over and over again. Earlier this year, a group of students from Central VPA, along with their teachers, very bravely went to Jefferson City, knowing that their requests for changes in the law would be ignored, it would be mocked, it would be denigrated. They did it anyway because they felt as survivors that they owed it to the ones who were injured and lost in their school, that they owed it to other students and future generations to have their voice heard. We heard them, we'll continue to hear them, we'll continue to fight for them until this nonsense, this insanity ends. So I just wanted to add that, and with that, I know Mr. Watson's going to lead into a presentation about safety enhancements that we're planning in schools, and just to sort of underscore the point that as a Board of Education, we take the safety and security of our students as the #1 priority, and we will be expending taxpayer dollars to install things like bulletproof glass, and bulletproof glass that will withstand automatic weaponry and multiple magazines. We will be installing state-of-the-art lock systems and doors into our schools to protect our students. We will be expending millions of dollars in taxpayer funds while the legislature sits back, introduces laws to repeal and prevent red flag laws that we know would have made a difference in the CVPA incident, we will be asking our taxpayers once again to contribute money to prevent automatic weapons from causing damage in our schools. I think that speaks volumes of the state of our country today. But thank you for bearing with me off the agenda, and we will continue on with that business, and that is the business of operating a public school district in the year 2023.
Thank you, President Davis. Very, very well stated. I'm going to invite our Deputy Superintendent for Operations, Mr. Square Watson, and our team, Colonel DeAndre Davis and Captain Misty Dobines. They'll frame for you some of the work that's happened to ensure that we can ensure that every building in our school system, that every child, every day in every classroom, every staff member, every visitor to our buildings, that they are safe and secure. As to Mr. Davis, President Davis's point, safety and security, #1 priority in St. Louis Public Schools. So I invite our team to share some of the work that we're doing to ensure safety and security every day for children, staff, families, and our community.
Thank you, Board, President Davis, for those words. Interim Superintendent Dr. Williams. I think in light of the recent tragedies that happened in Tennessee, as well as with the ongoing issues within the city of St. Louis and across the nation, the cry from families and communities regarding violence and gun control within this country and in communities is increasing. So part of this presentation is to provide the board and the public with updates from our Safety and Security Department. Here with Captain Misty Dobine, who's the Safety and Security Supervisor, as well as in spirit with Colonel DeAndre Davis, who's the Director of the Safety and Security Department. So some of the topics that we'll cover this evening to address the safety concerns, or to address, as it was mentioned, safety being the #1 priority for the department and for the district and from the operations team, is we'll talk about some of our staffing. We'll discuss some of the training that has been implemented this fiscal school year, as well as some of the resolutions, and provide updates that were that was provided to the board, give you a status update of where we are with those resolutions. Also, some of the initiatives to address mental health, as well as just provide a summary, or overall summary of the Safety and Security Department, and we'll follow up and finish up with any questions. I'll begin with our staff and our allocations for the Safety and Security Department. As you could kind of see on the slide before you, the breakdown of all of the staff, including the command staff, down to our stationary officers. I would like to kind of highlight the stationary officers. Currently, we are allocated 80 positions. We have 8 vacancies in those seats, 8 vacancies in those space. Out of those 80, or those 72 that are remaining, 28 of our elementary schools have safety officers, as well as our middle and high schools. I also like to note the last column under the allocation. From those that we have 21 that were brought on between November, December up to now, and that's kudos to our Human Resource Department for increasing the wages for our safety officers. And then to the right, we list our support staff that are housed at META P. And collectively, again, with the priorities of ensuring that our schools and our scholars remain safe. The goal is by the end of this fiscal year that all of our positions are fully staffed. So this next slide addresses the increasing need and mandates for training. The Safety and Security Department has initiated a training schedule that allows for additional days for our officers, our safety officers. They're built into our professional development calendar. One of the training sessions in particular is Stop the Bleed, that was completed this February 2023, in which we have a series of 20 to 25 officers taking these classes, and these classes are offered twice bi-weekly. The second session will begin in May, and this particular training session helps to, particularly for our safety officers or anyone within our facilities, particularly in an emergency or bleeding emergency situation, to provide the professional help before our first responders arrive on the scene. Other training topics include, I won't necessarily go through them all, but just kind of highlight the family reunification, de-escalation training, and active shooter training, just to name a few. So in addition, we've had 8 officers that have attended a tabletop discussion at Francis Howard. This is the CSTAG, which is an acronym for a Comprehensive School Threat Assessment Guidelines, and this formed the basis of a crisis intervention team. So these 8 will begin this crisis intervention team, which we will, throughout the district, be able to provide a committee so that we could provide strategies for intervention, prevention, and problem solving in an effort to stop conflict before it escalates. We've also had 6 staff trained with crisis prevention intervention. We're using a train-the-train model, so the last professional development day back in February, these officers, these certified staff trained all of our safety officers in this particular CPI model. And this CPI, this, again, crisis prevention intervention training or strategies, provide strategies for restraining, additional strategies for breaking up fights to help reduce our safety officers whenever these incidents arise. I would also like to commend our Safety and Security Department because we've had several requests from schools that are listed, the Missouri School Board Association, as well as DuPont High School, which is in Illinois, just in regards to our template for our school safety preparedness. I personally was at a conference in the Council of Greater City Schools in New Orleans, and they really applauded the team, the safety officer team, for their responsiveness in particular to October the 24th. We will have 7 officers that are scheduled to attend the MSBA Academy in the fall of 2023, and currently we have 10 officers that are certified in ALICE, that is active shooter training. ALICE is an acronym for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate, which is a 5-step process to increase the chances of surviving an active shooter drill. And these particular certified trainers also go to schools to provide staff and our district school leaders the training so that they will be able to respond in the event of an active shooter. This next slide provides some updates to some resolutions that was presented to the board over the course of the year. Some of them, and I'll just highlight a few, are just some of our radios that have been assigned to all of our officers, so all officers have radios, some consoles, video file systems. The video file systems provide just an additional layer of security for our facilities as well as our equipment so that we are able to kind of view the perimeters of our facilities. Some of the things that we're looking to initiate this year are these open gate detectors, which is a less intrusive method to allow particularly huge groups or crowds to kind of go into a space, but they will still more or less kind of be under the guise of a metal detector. So those things will be picked up. Also with the Omnigo software, this particular software or this particular platform allows schools to provide incident reports, more or less streamlining that process. So when there's the incident report or any type of reporting within the schools, this information can go into this particular platform in which our safety officers and our safety team will be able to receive those reports and possibly respond if needed. All of our officers have been certified in both first aid and CPR. The initiative surrounding mental health, I think that's definitely a big area in which the Safety and Security Department, again led by both Colonel Davis as well as Captain Dobine, to provide just an outlet for our safety officers. And that they include things such as yoga, a fitness center, and just counseling. Just being able to talk to someone about some of the high-stress activities and some of the things that go on in the day-to-day lives and even both professionally and personally with our safety officers, as well as just the operations team as a whole. So this last slide just kind of provides an overview, a summary for the Safety and Security Department. All of our schools have what we call alarm.com, which is a security system that basically provides just some mechanisms that we are able to use technology. We also have 35 of our elementary schools that have had security upgrades, and this more or less includes cameras in strategically located areas within the schools that the safety officer team, in conjunction with the principal, kind of identify. All of our safety officers have received some form of active shooter training, as well as our armed safety officers, in conjunction with the St. Louis Police Department, have received some active shooter training. All of our high schools and middle school principals have been supplied radios, and this will allow them to communicate directly with dispatch and also some of our key safety officers and personnel to respond to an incident within the schools. 28 of our elementary schools, again, I made note of this earlier, have safety officers. And then the last bullet, this 911 RTA kickoff. This is another tool another tool for our schools and particularly our safety officers to respond to proximities, or if there's an incident or any type of activity going on around our schools. I particularly have this 911 RTA, and my phone constantly bings and buzzes because there is constant activity around our schools, and they include things such as whether it's a shooting, fighting, assaults, you name it. If it's on the police radio, on their dispatch, we get the alarm, particularly if it's on our school grounds or within close proximity. But the idea for this particular tool is for us to more or less respond quicker to incidents that happen in and around our facilities. So with that, we'll open up for any questions.
Hi, thank you for that presentation. I was just wondering, I had a couple, sorry about that. So the radios that you're talking about, those are, I guess, like a closed encrypted channel so that they can't be picked up from outside the district, or how do those work in terms of security?
These are radios that communicate to our dispatch from the principals. So the principals will have, if there's an emergency, they can transmit to our dispatch and we can have immediate response. Or if they have officers in the school, they can communicate within that school. So it's just two channels, one that communicates with our dispatch and then one that will communicate with the officer within that building if there's something that happens.
So if there's somebody in range that also has a similar model of Kenwood radio, they would not be able to pick that up?
No, it would be only just for the school district. No one will be on the same channel as us. We have our own designated channel and towers.
Okay, and then is there a reason that elementary schools aren't being provided, that the principals of elementary schools aren't being provided with those radios, or is that in the works?
That's in the works.
Okay.
So the first tier was the high schools and the middle schools, and then it will go down to the elementary, yes.
Got it, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't necessarily have a question, but I do want to definitely recognize and commend you both. This has been a very trying time for both of you all. You have experienced more trauma than anyone really could imagine. The Central VPA itself was challenging, but I don't think we understand the depth of other things that you all are actually experiencing, because when we're losing children at other schools, you know, from outside, that's not necessarily occurring at the school, but within the community from which they're from, that affects you all, because you, especially Ms. Dobai, you have to endure that. I think it's remarkable, and I have so much respect for how you guys continue to have that resilience to keep fighting, and you need to be recognized for that. But I love the fact that you have thought enough to make sure that you all have those mental support systems there, the yoga, you know, the outlets. That's very important. And if you don't have that, there at some point will be a breaking point. So you guys need to definitely be commended for the outstanding job that you guys continue to do. And Mr. Watson, I have yet to hear you say no. But I did hear that little jab you threw in that, you know, you getting a 911, you know, you your phone is blowing up. So that's probably something we need to look at to make sure that that level of support is evenly distributed. But all honesty, I think you guys are doing an outstanding job, and you should definitely get your flowers. Keep up the good work, and we hope that we're leaning in, supporting you guys the best we can. One of the things that I was looking at, I saw on one of the slides you presented about a grant. It was one grant, but I'm curious on the other security mechanisms that we're working on. Is that money that's coming from the state, considering they, you know, turn down the voting for the red flag? Can they at least provide us funds to protect the, like the 5 open gate detectors pilot at the elementary schools? How is that funded? Is that funded from what President Davis is saying, where we're going to have to use the taxpayer dollars, or is that going to be grant dollars that we'll be able to receive?
I think those funds are coming from our ESSER dollars.
Okay, thank you.
I will just add, Ms. Cousins, in the latest legislative update, and we'll get more information from Mr. Carroll next week. They're marking up the state budgets, and there's a significant amount for school safety and mental health that are currently proposed in the budget. So if we're going to say something positive, we'll see if it lasts.
Oh, okay. Hi, I want to thank you once again for all the hard work that you put in, and we really do appreciate you. But my question is in regards to some of the ESSER funds possibly being used for digital signs outside each of our schools. Because I remember when Central VPA went through that horrific event, and I just keep thinking that it would be so much easier if we had outside signage that the district can control to alert the public immediately. So because people are asking questions and there's just so much stuff going on, it would seem that it would be easier if we had digital signs outside of all of our school buildings. Is that a possibility?
So that is something that we're exploring currently, working with the city in regards to digitizing our information. And I know a lot of the information that we get, particularly from the safety and security team, they like to vet it out just to make sure that we're accurate when we provide information to parents and communities. Also work with the Office of Institutional Advancement as well, so we will send out things through social media. But to your question, Ms. Jones, this is something that we're currently looking at now. We're exploring the digital signs and just to provide different ways of messaging and informing our parents and communities in regards to if anything or incidents or just events within our schools. This will be our way to communicate to them.
And then, Ms. Cousins, to answer your question about the funds, the school violence grant was used to pay for that. Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Deputy Watson and Captain Dobynes. We're going to continue this evening with a presentation from our Associate Superintendent, Dr. Isaac Pollock. He'll frame some of the work that's happening with our Redesign Fellowship, giving us a data update, where we are, the number of participants and just a status of this initiative. Thank you, Dr. Pollack.
Good evening. So I'm here tonight to provide a status update and a data update around the Redesign Fellowship as it wraps up Cohort 1 and in preparation for a possible Cohort 2. So we began with 7 principals. They were experienced, 14 years of experience on average, 9 as administrators. Average years of teaching for each of them was 7 years of teaching, representing 2,100 students. In the second year of the program, that went down to 6 schools as one principal was transitioned from Laclede to Gateway Middle. The commitment that we made was 1 year of planning for them from December 2021 to December 2022, and then supported implementation that included continued executive coaching, excellent school visits, and ESSER II spending alignment. So the components of the program. So we had 10 total intersessions, 6 in the spring and 4 in the fall. We paid for executive coaching. We had one-to-one support where the institutions we worked with actually went to their schools and supported them. We instituted flexibility discussions with the district leadership teams twice. They received stipends. We're currently engaging in excellent school visits. The final presentations were the products were final presentations of what their prototypes were, their design books, and their action plans. So we decided to focus this on the human-centered design process out of the human-centered design process, which is really a strengths-based approach where principals and leaders, it's a bet on the principals and leaders for them to decide where they want to focus and for us to help them to prototype ideas in that area. So what you'll notice is that it's really, we make a lot of plans in the district. This was a chance for them to test, make small tests in their plans before they just sort of rolled everything out at once. We did integrate this idea of equity in there, which was who is being served by the actions, who is being left out, and how does this advance equity in your school community. I do just want to pause and say that this could not have been completed without the support of the Institute for School Partnerships, without the support from Jay Hartman and Peter Dry, and their work around leading from strengths. So these were the prototypes that they came up with in the fall and then refined in the spring. You'll notice that there are 6 here, 6 schools. Again, one dropped off as the principal was transitioned to a new school. And you'll see that for each of those schools, there was a strategy that they focused on, that they decided to focus on. And then within each of those, one or more prototypes that they tested. And they went through a series of tests. It was not just the leader. As we went into the spring, into the fall, each leader incorporated a design team at their school. 4 of these schools were comprehensive schools, and 1 was targeted. So we decided to focus in the very beginning on 5 measures of outcomes. Those were staff retention, staff satisfaction and perception data, enrollment over their projections, improving the average student grade level growth in reading and math, and then the fellows' own perception of their leadership. 2 of those are still pending, the staff retention and enrollment over projection, but we'll focus on the other 3 tonight. I do just want to pause here and put a caveat that we know that there were additional inputs in place. So this is not like some golden silver bullet, whatever kind of bullet, whatever you want to say. ESSER II dollars were spent to support these schools. Again, comprehensive dollars were spent in several cases and targeted in several cases. Some of them had additional allocations from the district. And so I want to thank all of those who participated to support the schools in that way. So the next 4 slides will walk through the overall success of the program. So we've divided up the STAR results, and this is from the fall to winter. This is matched results. I do just want to thank the assessment department and the academic department for collecting the data and providing the data. So what you'll see is that in K through 5, the redesigned schools overall outperformed the non-redesigned schools in their change from fall to winter, and these are matched scores. So that's 0.52 grade levels of growth in reading and 0.48 grade levels of growth in math. In addition, 3 out of the 4 redesigned elementary schools surpassed the district average growth, and 4 in reading, and all 4 of the elementary schools surpassed it in math. So it wasn't just one school doing tremendously well, it was several, if not all of the schools. At the high school level, what you're looking at here is just the Vashon data. The Roosevelt data came in later, so we didn't include it, but you'll notice that we did not see the same level of academic growth at Vashon. In terms of panorama, I'm going to walk through the family, the student, the staff, and the student data. So the family data you'll see is mixed. Several markers moved forward, several markers didn't. You'll see versus the district on the far right, several markers moved, the majority of the markers moved forward versus the district. In terms of staff, again, mixed. You'll see that the change from the last survey, there were 3 markers that moved forward for those schools, but overall, they're still trailing the overall district averages. And then finally, in terms of students, you'll see that the schools made improvements in the majority of areas, but still are trailing the district averages. Finally, I want to talk about the fellows' perceptions. So overall, had a positive, if not significant positive, determination of the impact that the fellowship had on their own leadership. And you'll see on slide 12, overall great opportunity, positive, et cetera. A lot of the concerns about what kind of support am I getting from the district? How is the district allowing me to actually implement the plans that I have built into place? So what I want to do now is focus on individual schools because here's the summary. The summary is that mixed results overall. It's still very early. But what this program was meant to do was be a flashlight for the school in a specific area. And what we saw was that in the majority of cases, that area moved for those schools. So if a school focused on, I'll start with Shenandoah. In Shenandoah's case, they focused on academic tutoring, on tiered academic supports. And what they saw was significant growth in terms of reading and math. And so you can see overall the redesigned schools moved 0.52, but the Shenandoah moved in reading 0.76. And then in math, the overall redesigned schools moved 0.48 and Shenandoah moved 0.60. So when they focused on on MTSS, on this idea of multiple tiered support systems, they were able to move their students forward academically.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yes.
Dr. Pollack, this is the work session, so we are supposed to
please
have a conversation. So, so this slide made me think. So each of the principals and chose sort of a different thing to work on.
Frame, yes.
And so the Shenandoah was one where they focused on something that we would probably expect to show in test scores.
Unfinished standards.
Yeah, and it did.
Yep.
And then, but then some of the some of the other principles, while ultimately the goal always, of course, is academic achievement, there may have been other things that they were focusing on that might take more time to lead to academic achievement. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it's some of the more other kinds of leading indicators for academic achievement instead of the academic achievement itself.
And so I guess my ultimate question is, what was the point of all this? So the point of this wasn't to show results like Shenandoah did in every school, although that was what they chose to focus on. The point of it was what?
Was retention of our excellent principals.
And by doing that, by giving them opportunities to spend time on things where they felt they needed growth for themselves or for their school.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
But can I add to that? I think on the Shenandoah, I actually had the opportunity to go. I saw the presentation that the Shenandoah principal and her team actually did at Redesign, but I actually went to the school to see overall. And what I more so got was that it was leaning in and providing them support for the additional resources that they need to try, like you're saying, some different tools out. And one thing I found unique about Shenandoah is her retention of staff is all of her staff has been there for more than 10 years. Like her staff is genuinely committed, and she was able to show me a lot of different things that she was able to pull in from what she learned from redesign, something simple as how they're dismissing the kids. You know, if it rains, the carpool, like she made it more, she had the ability to make it more simplified and easier for the parents as well as for the teachers, as well as the after school piece that she has. So I thought that what she was doing was very unique. But what I'm finding her challenge is the location of the building, and the students that they're trying to actually market or try to reach. The challenge is them having to cross major intersections. So it's kind of like, hopefully part of her learning in the redesign is that she's been armed with some tools on how to address challenges of that magnitude.
Thank you. And I think that, so her case is very specific because she was the only new principal. There was a transition from the old principal, and it was pretty seamless. I think part of it was, you know, the fact that they had this additional support and everything else that was going on. Shenandoah is an interesting case, to your point. They actually lobbied the city for a speed bump, which was then put on the wrong street. And that was before her time there, but the previous principal did do that. So I think, to your point, they're aware of it, and this is trying to give them the tools to say, now that I know of an issue, a specific issue, how do I solve that specific issue? And how, not just alone, but with my design team and broader. Thank you.
I'm not sure what ward that is, and Ms. Saunier may be able to tell us in a couple weeks. That brings up a good point, though. So, you know, and I'll let you get back to presentation. So we're seeing results. Just take Shenandoah for instance, where it was a targeted program, and again, kudos to her because she took over from another principal who started this, and then she took it and ran with it. For something that they were able to work with within the school building. But when they're going through this process, did it raise issues that are beyond their control of the school building, that are maybe in control of this building? And was there a mechanism through this process for those concerns to be raised and addressed?
Absolutely. So all challenges at the school level, right, do at some point touch this building. The ones that touched it more, I think, had more difficulty with the program. Twice during the program, once in the spring and once in the fall, we collected together all of the deputy superintendents and had the fellows present to them what their prototypes were, and for the deputy superintendents to give feedback on the feasibility and to also walk away with how can I then help support these schools. So that was the mechanism that we used. I would say that as you can see in their own reports, they didn't feel like there was necessarily they didn't get the traction that they were hoping for from the district, and the ones that focused on things in their locus of control saw the most movement.
So, I'd like to see that list.
Okay.
You know?
Absolutely.
I mean, that would be of interest to me.
But also, you're saying the deputy superintendents, where do the network superintendents fall in line in regards to the redesign team? Are they at the table with that? Because I would hope that they should be playing an integral part in helping them get the needs, you know, of what they're doing in regards to their redesign plan.
Absolutely. So I misspoke before that. It was both the networks and the deputies were present at those. And in addition, I just want to give a shout out. The network superintendents have been extremely supportive, both attending some of the sessions and I will say the network superintendents who have kept the closest contact with their principals through this, those are the schools where we've seen a lot of traction as well. Okay, so we are up to Vashon. As I showed before, the Vashon's academic results didn't see the movement that we saw in the elementary school. But what we did see, their target was 9th grade culture, was creating a 9th grade academy. And what we saw was that the cultural findings through the student level responses of Panorama did show movement. So you can see 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades, and you can see that top row in 9th grade, that's where we saw that movement. So they targeted the 9th grade to build culture. They saw movement in the 9th grade culture.
Dr. Bullock, can you, what are the Panorama questions like? Are they the 1 through dots 1 through 7?
I don't know exactly what the like the Likert scale is on those.
But it is a Likert scale.
I'm not sure.
I haven't taken the one for our family this year. Okay, just curious.
I do believe it's a Likert scale, and then my understanding is that then there are certain responses that are marked as positive, and that's what they use to average the positive responses. So Carver has.
Sorry, I have
Please.
a question about Vashon.
Great.
I'm just curious, specifically for sense of belonging, for rigorous expectations, and for engagement, what was some of the mechanisms to measure that?
Sorry, sense of belonging,
Rigorous expectations and engagement, specifically.
So all of these were questions from the survey. I don't actually know the exact questions offhand, but I could get those for you.
It's student perceptions.
Yeah, this is all student perceptions of those things.
So you tested them at the beginning of the school year. I mean, you asked them this question at the beginning and then asked them at the end and just saw if the student felt like they belonged more or if they were more adapted to rigorous expectations and things like that.
Absolutely. So this is actually the panorama data that's given twice a year, once in the fall and once in the spring. And so this is the fall results compared to the previous results.
Okay.
And so all students in the district take this, all staff in the district take it, and then it's offered to parents as well.
Okay.
Thank you. And you can see here that 148 responses were logged, so it was a significant amount of students. So Carver has implemented the house system, but really to move this idea of sense of belonging. If you hear the principal speak about his own sense of belonging at his school when he grew up, that was what he targeted. You can see here the results of sense of belonging over time. So this is to your point, Ms. Sagne, from fall 2019 at 65%. The sense of belonging decreased once COVID hit, and then you can see it bouncing back dramatically this past fall, and you can see where it compares to the rest of the district as well. In addition to sense of belonging, he was also trying to move school climate, and you can see the school climate measures as well on the next slide. At Woodward, they were trying to move this idea of rigorous expectations. You can see their results as well. They're increased from 76% to 82%, and then the overall how they compared to the district. For Roosevelt, you can. This is the staff survey. So what they tried to move was engagement as well, and you can see the drastic improvements from the last survey to this survey. And again, this is perception data from staff, but this is staff perception data out of Roosevelt. They did not see the same movement necessarily from student data, so the student data is lagging here in terms of their engagement perceptions. And finally, Melanphy saw significant growth from the last survey and versus the district in terms of their family, and that's what they were trying to target again, but has not yet seen the movement in terms of students' perception of their own. So again, this is very early stage data. What we see is that all schools saw improvement in some ways, and most schools saw improvement in the very specific ways that they targeted. But overall, it's still early to determine how this has impacted the overall schools. So what's included is...
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
How much impact does student mobility have on this? Sorry, I'm always going to ask the question.
No, that's a great question. And yeah, I mean, that should always play in our minds. So I would say that in terms of the academic data, we're looking at matched data. So it's not affecting the data itself. It is affecting who's represented in the data. So students who come or leave is not represented in that data. And then in terms of the panorama data, this is overall. So if there's a significant shift in demographics in a school, it wouldn't show that. But this is not matched data, so that's whoever was there and took the survey in each. We did, so one, I'll give an example of where they did lobby the district and the district did respond very positively. So to give a shout out there, we were going to give the Panorama survey in a specific week in, I think it was September. The redesigned schools said, we really want it to happen over the parent-teacher conferences. We'll have parents there. We can actually engage them in exciting ways and get them to take the survey. And the district moved the window, both in the fall and now in the spring, so that it would overlap with parent-teacher conferences. So once again, this is a draft for what we could do for cohort 2, and then an application timeline starting April 3rd and then going through May 15th for a second cohort. And that is the end.
So, Dr. Pollack, it looks like redesign is your baby, so to speak.
I guess so.
Based on your time in doing this, what is your assessment in regards to, A, what will be needed to tighten it up? Where do you see there may be potential gaps in this, and what can be done to improve it if you're looking to go to a second cohort? And B, is this something that you see has provided impact for the district and for the principals that have had the opportunity to be a part of this? Because it looks like you did the Panorama surveys, but from your assessment of what you looked at, reviewed, what are you looking at? Do you see, yes, this is absolutely something we should be moving forward with, as well as, yes, we should move forward, but there are some areas that we probably need to tighten up and kind of look at that we probably weren't looking at, kind of refine it a little bit more?
Absolutely. So I think to take your first question first, I think there's a couple lessons that we've learned. We spent some time reflecting on last year. One is to definitely continue to engage the community from the start, which we did in the second semester, but not the first, to have that design team from the start, which we did in the second semester, but not the first. And then to work on a tighter alignment with other initiatives from the district. So the comprehensive schools initiatives, the initiatives coming out of the academic office, trying to figure out how those align a little bit tighter. Something that Dr. Williams has pushed us on, and I appreciate that, is aligning what their focus areas are, getting them to reflect a little bit more on their needs assessment, and just so that it's a little bit more from your own needs assessment that you do as part of the district. That should be where this is coming from, in addition to your strengths-based work. So I think those are all lessons that we've learned that we're taking with us. In terms of whether this was successful or not, 7 principals started, 6 are still with the district, and 1 chose, and I don't think that was anything to do with this. 6 principals applied who were not selected, 2 of which are no longer in principal roles. And so that's sort of the control group. So if we're looking at, did this help principals who are quote, strong principals feel empowered and feel like they were growing in their role in a way that we don't normally support? I think the answer is yes. Could we do a better job of helping them to, pick those areas? I think that's certainly an area to grow for next time.
And my last question, what is that process? I'm glad you stated 6 were accepted and some were not. So are you looking at, when you're going into the phase 2 or the second cohort, how or what the application process, the approval like what that will actually look like? Do you think it should be that it should be more than 6? Do you how are we gauging the principals that have actually applied, the reason for accepting them or not accepting them, so on and so forth?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think that my recommendation would be to remain at the same scale. I think that I was just talking to Mr. Burton about this. This is one piece of the broader leadership pipeline work. And so this isn't for everyone, and this isn't trying to be for everyone. So I don't want to, this isn't sort of there were 5 categories that we looked at when we chose principals for the program. They were commitment, why do you want to do this fellowship, and how long do you see yourself staying in the current role? Strategic leadership, theory of action? Do they have some idea of where they wanted to go? Because new principals often don't have an idea, and experienced principals have an idea of what their focus is. Data orientation for leadership, and then the fifth strand was equity. And then for that one, how do you envision creating change in your school that ensures that the most marginalized students benefit and staff benefit as much as, if not more than others?
Are there things, having been through just this one, are there things that were developed through the redesign that these principals have learned, and are there mechanisms for them to share that with other principals to sort of leverage their experience now? What worked, what didn't? Can they share that with other principals on an informal basis, or are they, hooked up as, buddies? So what's working at Carver, would work good down the street. These couple things we can plug that in. Can you scale this in any way?
That's a great question. So, Public Design Bureau, who are the folks who led us through the human-centered design work, they put together a binder of work that was presenting to each of the fellows and had been used throughout the whole time, that sort of laid out what are the steps of the human-centered design: strengths-based focus, prototyping, ideating, right, like all those pieces. And one of the intentions was we wanted schools and school leaders who could use this process after they were done, right? So once you've chosen one area and you see movement in that one area, now you can choose your next area and see movement. We have engaged 2 of those leaders in our reflection work, and we've talked about engaging them as mentors in the next cohort, so they would sort of lead this work for their next. We haven't talked about how they're using it with other schools in the district. I will say there's some tangential sharings, as Ms. Cousins shared, where people are sharing, part of it was creating a network of leaders that feel strong about being together and not isolated. And then some network superintendents have taken it on for them to share within their networks as well.
Any other questions for Dr. Powell?
I don't have a question. I just, most of the time what I hear from principals who leave the district, and it's not probationary or disciplinary, is that, basically a desire for more autonomy, a desire, like, I'm closest to the problem in my school every day, but a lot of how I'm allowed to address the issues that I see have to go through the district, which maybe they do get addressed, but they take much longer. So I really like that this program exists and that it lets people who are, in those buildings and in those spaces every day and know the problem, identify their problems, and the district serves more of a supporting role to what, they know to be true. So I just thank you for your work and thank you for this.
Thank you.
My question is in regards to the results of the comprehensive program. Is there an audio-visual portion to this? Because I don't know, it just seems as if I hear all the professional jargon that you're using, and we have the public that's listening, and I'm sure sometime the words that you're using might fly over their head. I'm trying to understand how if you're talking about principals and them being in a leadership role, I want to know how the students feel about the principals, how the parents feel about the principals, because I don't get a feel for that. To me, that's almost the most important thing. I mean, we can always talk about how wonderful, their results might have been, but when we come down to the state results, things didn't look that good to me. But, I mean, that's just me. But I want to know, where can we find people actually talking about their principals and how good their leadership was at the school?
That's a great question. So I think part of it is that the panorama data is trying to get at that, right? It's trying to ask the students, how do you feel? We have also, I've been in touch with the Office for Institutional Advancement about actually going into the schools to get that video. And we do actually have, I didn't show it because it's not tremendously high quality video, but Carver took a video, the principal, of the students being assigned to houses and like the way they did it was they had kids run around the kid was called, they ran around the gym, and then they spun a giant wheel that assigned them to their house, and then they got a shirt and they ran in to everyone cheering like, you're now in the blue, whatever the houses were. And like the kid, you could see to your point, you could see the excitement on that kid's face that then tells you, like, that's why that kid wants to come to school. Mr. Clay has said that this is the highest attendance he's had, not even since the pandemic, but before the pandemic, where kids are saying, I want to come to school. And to your point, you see that on that kid's face. And so I think that, we could do a better job of showing that.
Right, that's just really what I want to see. I want to see how the parents are reacting. Yeah. I mean, visually. I mean, we do all the talking and that and what have you, but when I hear a parent, I want to see how they actually judge the principal, because when my children were in school, I wanted to have an opportunity to say, well, I didn't get this service and I wanted to participate more, or I want to hear what the students actually have to say. I know that we're going to talk up the principals and what have you, but please, in the future, can we start hearing and seeing what they're saying?
Absolutely. And I just want to, one last thing that I forgot to mention on that note. All the redesign, we spent a specific focus on that community engagement piece and about family engagement. And these schools had tremendously high turnouts. Hundreds of parents and grandparents come to their back to school events, to their parent-teacher conferences, and they restructured their parent-teacher conferences. So instead of just showing up and like going to X teacher, part of it was, how are we a community, and how are you giving me feedback on my overall school, and how are we sharing? And what they got were people out to participate.
Can they actually share those on their website?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And to your point, Donna, I'm glad you asked that, because I'm that visual person. And that was really one of the reasons why when I saw the presentation of redesign, I wanted to go to the school, like you said, myself. I want to see, not just on paper, but I want to see the body language, the interactions from the students, the teachers, even the teachers. And I was able to spend about 30 minutes close to when it was time to let school out, but just seeing just what you're saying, the kids were literally coming to the principal, talking to the principal. I came in, that's when I told you I walked by, and the first and second grade teachers was actually working on their Black History Month program, and they were teaching the kids the poem that one of our students wrote. So it was kind of like, you can really see, I really got that they wanted to be there. Even the teachers that I was asking them some questions like, what's your take on this? How do you feel? And once I learned that a lot of the teachers had been there, and they were like, I love being here. One lady was like, I've been a teacher at this same school for 20 years. So they really gave me even the librarian gave me a full insight and understanding, like, you know what, this is what's working. But I really was able to see, like I said, the challenges that principal and the school is facing because of where the school is located, because of the traffic issues, because I don't know if people realize where Shenandoah lies is right off of Grand, right? And that's where they hit and killed the bike rider. So it's a lot of problems with traffic, but that's the exact street that those kids and families have to cross because it's less than a mile. So there's no bus. There's not a lot of bus transportation. So I think that speaks volumes for them to be able to get, unfortunately, it was on the wrong street, but a speed bump. But that's something that really needs to take effect for them to know and learn that it's not just about what's inside that school. And hopefully a lot of these redesigns are letting our principals know it's not just about what's inside the school. You have to focus on the community that surrounds that building for which the school is in.
And all that reminds me, when we were at the presentation of these, every single principal came up to Ms. Cousins and I and invited us, kind of begged us to come see their schools because they were so excited and proud to join it. So I think we probably need to make some field trip arrangements before the end of the year. Time's getting away from us. So keep us honest on that, Dr. Pollack.
Thank you. Our final presentation of the evening will be our Pillar Leads. We're going to highlight some information specific to our Missouri School Improvement Program, MSIP 6. And so one of the policy goals actually frames this idea of the district's objectives for high achievement and the improvement of student achievement across the district. And so our CSIP, or Comprehensive School Improvement Plan, really frames the work with our 5 pillars. I'm going to ask our pillar leads to please come up. While you, board members, I just want you to be aware, you do have a very robust presentation in front of you. We are going to spend time this evening very succinctly. We will truncate what we have in front of us to really just highlight some of the areas in each of the pillars. You'll be able to see the progress that's being made. That was our commitment, that every month we'll come back to the board and share our progress toward goal attainment. So I'm going to turn it over to Pillar Lead 1, Cheryl Vanoy, Deputy Vanoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. As Dr. Williams indicated, tonight we'll be spotlighting some additional work that each of the pillars wanted to share. Some of the slides, like this one, are ones that you've seen before. Remember, we all have a North Star that we're trying to reach from each of the pillars, and that's what this is representing. We'll click through those quickly and focus on tonight's highlights. In Pillar 1, monitoring in the excellent schools, we are now focusing on the key performance action of the Quality Assurance Ambassador Monitoring. This is a process that we use to assign one central office staff member to each school. They are responsible for visiting the school during MAP or EOC testing to make sure that the assessment is going well. Tomorrow we will actually be completing the ambassador training. Ambassadors will then receive a schedule of their specific school and when the testing will actually occur. So they will be able to schedule their visit. The key performance indicator status, therefore, is in planning stages since training will be tomorrow. There is a Microsoft form that each ambassador will complete with specific questions. This is one that I'm going to click by because it's not a highlight tonight. So Pillar 1, this is an example of some of the questions that the ambassadors will be asking. They ask about security. They ask if we keep the test tickets secured. You know, they're all online now, so we want to make sure that we keep those secure prior and after testing. They also want to make sure that the school was involved in actually creating the test schedule that that school will be using. They also talk about the internal training that the school did for the actual, prior to the actual test. And they want to make sure that the test coordinator manuals were shared with the individual test examiners, or in this case, it's the actual teachers. And as I indicated, security is always a #1 concern. I will now hand this over to Dr. Claire Crapo.
I can't just do this to Dr. Pollack, so I got to do this to everybody. So is there a mechanism or a reporting for each school and for these ambassadors to identify challenges that they have outside of, you know, following the protocols and stuff like that, which is all very important, but sort of the other factors like the mobility rate or other issues affecting the school that they're concerned about testing? I mean, every school has the similar concerns about testing, but I imagine that there's some that are probably higher than others, and maybe there are some where supports would really make an impactful difference. So is there, in these ambassador visits, is that a way for that information to come back to this building?
So at the beginning of the year, if you remember, we have ambassadors that go to the schools 3 to 4 days that first week, and that's where a lot of that is shared. There is an open text form field in the Microsoft form that I'm talking about that they could add additional items, like the school has 6 teachers out today and we're testing, so that might be a concern. So they can certainly report that in that free text module.
And I guess so, are they encouraged to do that?
We will share that with training. We did when we trained last year, and we will make sure that they understand that we're also wanting them to look at the overall school, but the focus is really on testing to make sure that we're keeping everything safe.
Is there, in doing that, is there like a list or a certain certain red flags to look for. So, like, particular for mobility rates. So, you talk to principals sometime, like, all of a sudden they got a bunch of new kids in April.
Yes.
Where did they come from? We don't need to get into that. But they show up at their school. Is that something that in that text note that they're encouraged, like, hey, red flag this, because maybe that's going to require some additional investigation. Maybe that's just something that you come back to us when you talk to Pillar 1 and say, hey, X, Y, and Z school has these irregularities occurring in their school environment, and you need to know this board, you need to know this community, you need to know this DESE.
Sure, so that's interesting you bring that up. So we run the enrollment and withdrawals every week. And last week, the Nahid Chapman Institute had 12 new students enroll, all in one day, all from Afghanistan. So I did notify Dr. Williams and Dr. Krapel of that situation for a couple of reasons. We want to make sure they get their backpack and feel welcomed, but then we also want to make sure that they have the additional resources that they might need from a language standpoint or other circumstances.
Yeah, and that's a great example. And I just bring that up because this is a new accreditation module. It's going to be, I don't know, there's a call to throw it out and go to 7. There's a call to throw it out to go back to 1. There's state legislation to say, DESE, you're not allowed to ever do this again. So we don't know what's going to go on. But in our role as advocates, that's a great story to tell because that is not a sign of a failing school.
Correct.
That is a sign of an absolutely high-performing school district that is performing a public service to the citizens of Missouri. And it's not going to be reflected in the stupid map test,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So that's just one great example, and I know it happens all over the place.
Agreed.
It happens all over the place. So that'd be great information to do it.
The data certainly tells a story. Thank you.
Good evening. So Pillar 2 is about advancing fairness and equity across the system. And so the 2 goals I will highlight for you tonight are 2B, equitable access to gifted education, and 2D, equitable access to mental health. So I'll start with equitable access to mental health. So at the moment, the Office of Student Support Services is partnering with Human Resources to add 1 therapist to CSMB and CVPA for at least the next 3 years. And again, this is just one of our highlights for that goal. The second piece I want to talk about is equitable access to gifted education. And so I have 2 updates as it relates to that. So under the leadership of Dr. Smith Jr. and Ms. Natasha Mitchell, the academic office has embarked on nonverbal screening for all of our second grade students. So to date, 37 out of 39 of our elementary schools, those second grade students have participated in this nonverbal screening. And at this point, approximately 8.8% of those students have been evaluated or have been at least identified for further screening. So after they've gone through this nonverbal screener, they've been flagged to say, you know what, they should actually come in and perhaps be tested, do further testing for gifted testing. So they can either do that at the district office or they can also do that at their school sites, and their parents are being notified about this. So this is just one way we're trying to eliminate barriers to ensure that we're including all of our students in gifted testing. The second piece, and I think this is really the bigger piece. So recently the gifted department submitted a gifted alternative identification plan to DESE, and this was approved. And so the intent of this plan is to increase overall gifted identification and eligibility district-wide by eliminating unnecessary barriers in identification and utilizing eligibility criteria that better reflects the local norms for academic achievement. So what am I saying here? Because that's a lot of words. So basically, one of the biggest updates in the plan is that a change from the 90th percentile in one area of academic achievement to the 80th percentile in one area of academic achievement. And like I stated earlier, this reflects what other local school districts are doing and has been approved by DESE. So at this point, I will turn it over to Pillar 3.
Hold on.
Hold on.
Okay.
Sorry. Good try.
You did try. Good job, Dr. Kramer. I have a question. I do respect and understand the therapist piece for CSMB and CVPA. My question is, I want us to really work and highlight how we will look at that for or other troubling schools. As you guys know, Vashon is always, like in my preview, something we need to really focus on and the challenges that they're dealing with. So I want to make sure we're trying to tap into providing that particular school the support that they need, as well as Roosevelt. I know a lot has been going on around CVPA and CSMB, but I think these other high schools are schools we really need to tap into, and not just those, but I keep feeling in my heart that, which we should, we are comforting and supporting CSMB and CVPA, but I think what we're missing is Gateway. Gateway received those students, upon that tragic and what happened. There was trauma put, within that space as well. So I want to make sure we're leaning into all of our schools that are challenged with a lot of the crises that we're facing. But those schools in particular, I think we really need to to put some synergy around them as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'll make sure that Dr. Bender, I know, has been working around a plan for social workers and counselors at our comprehensive schools, but specifically then adding in Gateway STEM to that plan.
I just had a question, and I anticipate you're going to get this question. So this isn't my question, I'm speaking for the community. The gifted alternative plan with the new 80%. So you have kids who were deemed not eligible previously under the old one. Are we going to go and revisit the students now that we have a new alternative plan?
Yes, it is my understanding, and I'm going to check on that. I want to make sure that I am clear with my response to you, that we will be revisiting students who were previously not eligible, specifically around academic achievement, but I'll verify with that with you tomorrow.
And I just, from my experience as a parent and having a student at a gifted school, it becomes really important to have clear, concise, easily findable protocols about things like that. That'll just my word to the wise to save you guys a lot of headache.
I appreciate
right,
that.
Emily?
Absolutely. My question, of course, is if we are expanding the number of our gifted students, which all of our students have gifts and abilities to bring to the world, are we planning, do we have a plan for the future as our numbers hopefully rise to be equitable and to reflect the populations of all of our schools? Do we think that there'll be more things like gifted pullout in every school, or are we just going to try to fill up the gifted schools? I mean, my vote is for gifted pullout in every school, but I would love to know if we have thoughts about that.
Yeah, and I can, I'll work with Ms. Mitchell I want to make sure that I'm doing her program justice here this evening, and so I can get that answer for you tomorrow. But my understanding is it's certainly not just focusing on only our gifted schools, but making sure we're giving opportunities for gifted pullout across the city, specifically not just focusing on some of our schools where possibly we've had students who are more likely to be identified for gifted, but looking to schools in different areas of the city, specifically on the north side, to ensure that they have the gifted pullout services there.
I want to publicly say I'm so thankful for the work Ms. Mitchell is doing. My kids are suddenly receiving gifted services at their comprehensive elementary school, and I'm on the Gifted Advisory Council, and the changes that she's made just in the time that she's been in charge have been so encouraging.
That's wonderful to hear. And I will say that this new alternative identification plan is currently on our website, so it is public. It's for all of our families to see, and she does have a detailed breakdown of how this actually works out. Okay. Thank you. Pillar 3.
Good evening, everyone. Pillar 3's focus is to cultivate leaders and educators, I should say, to foster culturally responsive learning environments. Since the last time we spoke, we really just have kind of two areas I want to lift up in terms of highlights and work that we've done. One's around the culture and climate, and so we rolled out, of course, the survey for Panorama survey for clients, for staff, students, and for parents. And then additionally, we're currently working on teacher retention efforts, and so we've One, we've created what I'm excited about. It's our first Grow Your Own program that targets our students. And so this is, we have actually 5 students who we've identified have gone through what I think is a rigorous selection process, who will receive a $15,000 scholarship to go to school to become teachers and ultimately teach for us. I think in line with this notion of teacher retention, we also, not listed here, this year we rolled out an evaluation process, for lack of a better term, for our ILAs, which are those non-certified staff who are been trained and who are supporting our classrooms. That process is going to allow us to identify the ILAs who are doing that job well, that we will then be able to plug into our teacher pipelines, of course, that we have with SLU, WashU, UMSL, and now Lincoln University, so they can ultimately become teachers for us. We believe that work, because they're already part of our system, that will actually empower them to be retained longer and to actually teach in ways that speak to the culture of our schools and our students. So that's it.
My comment question is for you, but also ties back to Pillar 2, because you were talking about, you know, the culture. So Dr. Smith, I remember us making a lot of comments about the gifted program before, and I see that it looks like that was put in and we've taken action, so thank you. But, you know, I really feel like with our gifted program, and I know that we have to do it within the limitations and guidelines of DESE, but I really would like us to explore other forms of testing outside of standardized forms of tests. If there's tests that do, kinesthetic forms of testing for just different ways that you can test gifted children, that maybe like Tony, who's a visual learner, maybe as long as you're putting a test in front of her, there's some anxiety, that's not her thing. But if you put some blocks in front of her, if you put some, some other type of things and say, can you build this or connect these dots, just those types of, I'd like us to diversify the way that we are identifying gifted students.
I'm glad you said that. So one of the pieces that's new is the nonverbal screener, and I had to write this out. So it's called the Naglieri. And what that is, it consists of diagrams and shapes. And so there's nothing written. And it's specifically designed for students who don't speak English as a first language, so they're not at a disadvantage. It also works with students who have different testing styles. So I really want to commend, to your point, the academic office for taking this step and being forward-thinking and making this switch to this nonverbal screener. So that's at least one step in the right direction.
Is that just for second graders right now, or are we expanding that out when we're gifting other grade levels as well?
So right now, it's just the screener for gifted testing. We're just doing that across the board for second graders. Anyone could essentially be screened on it, but it's really just the first step before then you go through the gifted assessment. And then in addition to, instead of having the 90% for academic achievement, with this new identification plan, it's now the 80th percentile for academic achievement.
Thank you.
Mr. Burton, we're going to give you a pass. We've been on you all day, so you okay.
Well, I will now turn it over to Pillar 4.
All right, good afternoon again. And so again, Pillar 4 is all about students learning to read and succeed. So of the 5 goals in Pillar 4, tonight I'll spotlight the goal area of English language learners, which has both a progress and a proficiency goal that we're tracking. So goal 5A, as you see on the slide, focuses on the percentage of ELLs demonstrating progress. And then goal 5B focuses on the percentage of our ELLs, our English language learners, reaching proficiency. And so to accomplish these goals, we've identified a few key performance action items, so those KPAs. And I'll highlight just 2 of those action items that have actually been completed. So the first is we have developed instructional expectation documents for our ESOL, so our English speakers of other language teachers, that identify high impact ELL strategies, activities, and accountability tasks. The second completed task thus far is we have developed a co-teaching for ELL training pathway As a reminder, co-teaching is where we have a certified ESOL teacher and a certified content teacher collaborate during lesson planning, instructional practices, and assessment to ensure that our students experience a culturally and linguistically focused classroom. And our key performance indicators, so the KPIs that you see on the actual PowerPoint slide, are divided into a few action items there, so 4 that I wanted to call out. One is the creation of that 4 documents, 1 each quarter with instructional expectations for our ELL teachers, and 43 new co-teaching partnerships have completed level 1 training with 56 teachers at a co-teaching level 2. Additionally, I would like to spotlight the action items that are continuing in progress, so just 2 areas to spotlight. The first is we conducted specific ELL walkthroughs. So these walkthroughs have been modified to incorporate elements of the overall academic office fossil walk structure and the look-fors. And the second in progress action item is increasing our teacher capacity through our professional learning around SIOP. So SIOP is an acronym for our Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. And our KPIs, so the key performance indicators connected to these in-progress action items, are 144 ELL walkthroughs have been conducted to date, and 38 new educators have completed our SIOP training with 15 in progress. The second slide is one that shows just the multiple sources of data that are being tracked to monitor progress on Pillar 4, so I won't spend any additional time there. But this slide here is really busy, but this is what I wanted to share with you, is that I want to bring your attention to just the middle of the actual PowerPoint slide deck. And so the middle of the slide deck talks about those ESOL walkthroughs, and I bring your attention to items number 1, 3, 4, 9, and 14. That's the data that we're looking at specifically around language objectives, content objectives, the different language acquisition opportunities that are being presented in the classroom, and how we're gathering that particular data. On the right-hand side, you'll notice our ELL progress. So when we take the access assessment, this is showing our progress toward language acquisition. And so the data focuses on the key areas that we've identified that have been historical patterns of underperformance around our ELL progress, which has been in the areas of speaking and in writing. And so I just wanted to provide a comprehensive or snapshot. And so any questions that you may have just around 5A and 5B.
Just so you know, we are getting a little old. Well, I am. And you know I can't read this.
Sure.
Okay. But the other thing I wanted to ask, the walkthroughs, is it you or is it your team that are actually going within the classrooms, kind of doing the assessment, engaging and providing support, or are you just going to do the assessments?
So
Did that make sense?
So 2 different questions there.
Right.
So one is around the assessment, the other is around the walkthroughs.
Right.
So with this particular goal, these are ELL walkthroughs or
Okay.
ESOL walkthroughs. That's with our ESOL teams.
Okay.
And so we partner with the ESOL teams, bringing academic office staff members as well to be a part of that, because those are modeled after the academic office fossil walks. But with assessments, that's done in schools by the teachers.
By the teachers, right. But I'm saying, when your staff is, when the staff is doing the walkthroughs, are they taking time to kind of assess things that they see, or that's what I meant in
No,
regards to
absolutely. So thank you for that opportunity to clarify. So there's an actual tool that we use that has specific look-fors.
Okay.
So around instructional practices, we're looking at language objectives, content objectives. Are there opportunities for multiple representations for language skills that are being used? So we're looking at all of that. And then there's also wraparound supports provided by an ELL coach as well. And then we have a debrief conversation, typically from our director of ESOL. You've met Dr. Ala Gonzalez, that has that conversation with the school leadership team to talk about next steps, areas that they've noticed, and then supports that can be provided by the ELL coaching.
Okay. And I do want to commend you guys, because somebody reported on it. I think it was Dr. Crapo. But one of the things I always go back to what I see. I'm a visual, like, Sonia, I'm going to get you for that one. But one of the things I do want to touch on that I did see and I'm going back to Shenandoah, as I was leaving, I think someone was coming in, like from 801 to provide the tutoring or something of that magnitude. I thought that was very interesting. And what I found from the principal and the teachers, they were saying how helpful it actually was. Like, it really showed a difference. So I'm guessing that's coming from your department, where you guys are able to kind of identify the challenges that some of the schools are having with regarding reading and trying to help and give them the additional assistance that they may need.
I would say that's two separate things there. So I think you may be talking about
You're not gonna take credit for something?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't take credit for anything that I don't
Go ahead,
deserve.
Dr.
And so that is a initiative outside of our interim superintendent's office
Okay.
around providing after-school tutoring, leveraging 801 staff specifically to provide that type of tutoring. Outside of that, we do provide additional resources specifically to this goal.
Okay.
In those particular areas with the ELL coaches, with the support teams that are in that ESOL, ELL space. So those are two separate conversations.
Well, outstanding, Dr. Williams. Thank you.
I just have one question. How are we doing in terms of certified ESOL teacher vacancies? And is that one of those hard to fill spots, particularly after the pandemic?
That's a loaded question there, and so
maybe we can defer to Mr. Burton. We left him off easy.
and so one of the conversations we've been focusing on is a collaborative conversation with human resources around ESOL staffing, a weighted staffing approach to what that looks like. And so I can get you the actual numbers of where we are currently with staffing. But one of the things that we've been challenged with that we see as an opportunity is we go through multi-year co-teaching training. You know, like the co-teaching model is an intensive approach to this particular work. We train people up, it's multi-years, and then sometimes they no longer remain in the district, right? So we're constantly replicating that process. But I can get you the actual numbers of where we are and how we position ourselves to support our ESOL staff.
Yeah, I'd be very interested in that. That'd be great. Thanks.
All right, if there aren't any other questions, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Lori Willis.
Good evening. I think you've seen this slide before. I'm here to present on behalf of Pillar 5, Building Community Partnerships and Resources to Support the Transformation Plan. Today we're going to highlight a few of the programs that we're working on in volunteer services, marketing, communications, and development and partnerships. So if you'll take a look at this slide, I'll back up here so I can see it better. We launched our volunteer check-in and check-out program this week with 8 schools in our district who are working very, very hard to find out if we can track the time of our volunteers a little bit better than we are at this point. So we've created some rudimentary posters. They're very beautiful posters, but they're the first entry into this arena because we have ideas of working with Ms. Van Noy to create a kiosk that would make it a more beautiful presentation, but right now we're just trying to see if we can get our volunteers used to checking in and checking out. But again, we're testing that in about 8 different schools. Mr. Ryan L. Jackson is in charge of volunteer and mentoring services, and he's talking about the faith-based partners. And there's a breakdown there that shows you how many of our faith-based partners are engaged at this point in time. And we've checked in with all of them to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information that we can in regard to those partners. We are looking at 35 partners that are engaged, 15 pending, 12 partners absent. The family community specialists have been trained. And the Finish Line program. Many people may not be aware of the Finish Line dual enrollment program. It's with Harris Stowe University, and Ryanell has 31 students in that program that he works with on a regular basis to make sure that they get through that program and they complete it and are on to having additional credits in their college careers. Pillar 5 highlights for scholarship awards.
Can I,
Yes, sir.
since you're going on a different topic, can
Yes,
I ask questions about this? I'll go backwards.
Okay.
And this is just something I've always kind of wondered, and since you're here, why is the Finish Line program in your department?
Well, that's a very good question. It started out in other departments, but as people left through attrition, it ended up with Ryanell. Ryanell has a heart for this program, and he really did not want to give it up. So it now rests with him, and because of the nature of his program, he's used to dealing with mentoring and tutoring, this sort of fell in line. So it rests with Ryanel right now because the team, which I think there were 4 people in the team, 3 of them have gone. So we provide him the support and the backup he needs to complete that program.
Okay. It just always seemed
Thank you.
like a CTE program.
I think that it might be, actually.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yes.
That's interesting.
No, thank you.
And just in terms of volunteers and the recruitment of volunteers
Yes.
and how this look like, how do you identify, I guess, what schools need volunteers, what they need volunteers for, and how many they need?
Largely, we let the schools make that decision. So there's quite a bit of dialogue between Ryanel and the school teams and between Ricky Sykes and the school teams, and they will let them know. But there's also some crisscross with our partner relations group. So we work with principals on 2 different aspects of finding out what their needs are, partners and volunteer and tutoring. So they will have constant dialogue with the principals as to where their needs are. And they also ask for specific students that might need targeting with reading and other math or any of the other subject areas. But they work very closely with OASIS, the tutoring program. So we provide the training and support OASIS in that training and send them out to schools that make sense. So basically, I think that answer is there's just a lot of dialogue between Ryanel and the team and the principals. And there is a lot of tracking with regard to that program as well. We try to make sure that even though we don't report on individual progress, we do report on the effectiveness of the program. And I should say that the check-in and check-out system also has a feedback mechanism. So that'll allow some of our volunteers and mentors to ask for certain opportunities or to give us a status update on where they are at this time.
So I guess my personal experience with being a volunteer is, you know, as a parent,
yes,
to do certain activities within the school, the procedure set by the district is we have to go through the approved volunteer process.
Right.
So, you know, I'll answer the call, field trip chaperone as an example. You know, sometimes there's events, they'll check your approved volunteer status. So that's stuff that me interacting with the school, it's happening. I've never had a call that they're asking for tutors or crossing guards or anything like that. But I know that those exist. So are those things that come to the family community specialists from the community, or are those people that contact your office, or does the school say, hey, we need 5 tutors for after school OIA, do you have people you can send us? How does it work?
It works in all of those ways, to be honest. And we do work very closely with the family community specialists because they're the best people in many cases to target a need. And so we have training ongoing with those family community specialists. But as you know, they take up a lot of work within the school setting, so we try not to put too much on them. But we do listen to them and take their lead at times in order to make sure we have them, the volunteers, where they're needed. Thank you.
I have a question in regards to the clergy. How are you assessing what role they're actually playing? Like, I know you're reporting on a lot of the participation and things that they're doing, but how are we assessing where they are, the impact that they're actually having, if they're having an impact? And then where are we on the training? I think I've heard you say something before about how people are trained when they come to volunteer. Who does the training, and what does that actually look like? Is that through OASIS?
OASIS does lead their training, but Ryanel provides the support for that. We lead our family community specialist training, and we can find outside partners that can also host training if that is the need that we see. But right now, most of the major organizations like an OASIS will have their own programs and materials and products, and we just make it work within our programs.
And the clergy, how do you assess the clergy? Like what role do they actually play? I'm just trying to get a clear understanding of what are we doing with the clergy?
We've worked over the last few years to be more intentional with our work with the clergy, and that includes making sure that they come with a theme in mind. We circle their participation around a particular theme. So we see them coming to donate coats and to hear the superintendent. We see them coming in to meet the new superintendent. On Thursday, we have our clergy meeting at about 11 o'clock, and they will be able to do that. But basically, what we do is arm them with materials that they can go back and share with their churches. We share State of the District address information with them on a regular basis. So when clergy come back and say, well, we'd like to help you with this, or we'd like to help you with that, they will then mobilize their congregations. And I can't say enough about the team that regularly comes in here, and they have either a breakfast or a lunch, and they listen intently with what the needs of the district are. And then we will definitely hear from their congregations on how they might help. Talking about partners, that is a different area. That's under development and partnerships, and they're working with 12 scholarships for SLPS seniors now. They've been awarding, they're working on these scholarships that are coming in now, and they have awarded $14,000. Nearly $120,000 in scholarships have been given to students who might possibly attend Webster University. This is an interesting program. We've worked with Rotary Club for years. They are one of our most treasured partners, and that's because they award 2 students at each high school, eligible, deserving students, with a opportunity to have a $5,000 scholarship to Webster University and to have a luncheon in celebration of their wonderful academic feats. Unfortunately, because of circumstances here in October, we were not able to have that event. So our development and partnership coordinator went out through all of the high schools and hand-delivered and had a big parade and a big surprise and a reveal. And I have to say that today we were able to help a young lady solidify her application to go to Webster with that $5,000 scholarship. So they are doing a wonderful thing for our students, and the students do appreciate it. We've created a general scholarship fund within the foundation to increase opportunities for scholarships. Our 314 day went very, very well. For a first time out, we're very pleased with that. And this was our establishing year. We're hoping to create mechanisms through which we can build a culture of philanthropy. And I will give credit for that saying to Aaron Kane, our Director of Development, because that's what we're trying to do within our district in the development and partnerships area. And that includes specifically targeting areas where we can take in scholarships for our students, finding out from the high schools what is needed, and then working with those scholarships to find out who in these particular schools qualifies for different scholarships and making them known. We've been very aggressive with this in the last few months, and we're proud of it, and I hope to have some more information on how that has broadened the opportunities for our students going forward. Our nonprofit partners.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, please do.
What can you share? Is it tacky to ask how much you brought in on 314 day?
No, it's not. I really would tell you that not all of the information has been tabulated because we did direct mail. So I can get you that number. I don't have it at this time, but I can get it for you. Initially, I don't want you to think it's going to be millions or anything. Let me just be clear. It is probably under 1,000 right now, but without the direct mail counted in. So hopefully that will boost things. But again, this is our establishing year, so we're hoping that's going to be something that might kick off. And we were very excited to hear that that was one of our students who actually started 314 Day.
Oh.
And so we're very happy to keep supporting that and see if that's able to support our initiatives going forward.
Thanks.
So we are increasing our nonprofit partners. We're moving that up. We had a couple of years ago, I think we had more along the lines of 398 partners. And after COVID and the pandemic break, we dropped some partners, but some of them left because they had other priorities and they changed, that shifted during the pandemic, but some of them left because, you know, they were no longer meeting the needs that we had. We now have about 209 solid partners, and we're excited to have the partner fair coming up in the spring, because in this partner fair, we're going to invite the principals. This is an annual event that hasn't happened since the pandemic, or since before the pandemic. And so we are working with the various partners to come in, meet our principals, and I think it goes back to one of Mr. Davis's questions. At this point in time, they're working with our various schools, but they may, during this fair, decide that they want to expand and add more schools in. And that's what we allow the principals to do, to come in, meet the partners, and go right up to the partners and say, we need you in our school. And so that's something we're very excited to reopen. This is also where we get our MOUs. We gear up for MOUs at that event. And we explain the process, help work them through the process, and establish the context that we need. Yes, sir.
So in the partner fair, I don't think we ever formally adopted it, but we've bounced it around. Dr. Pollack's still here, but and you were involved in that too. The sort of statement of our not our priorities. I'm losing the word. Sort of our ideals for partnership.
Yes.
Is that something that you can include in that partnership?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're going to go through them with the MOUs, and I hope that you also sort of stress the fact that there's going to be an examination of the metrics for what they performed.
Yes.
Because we've had this conversation. We had this conversation particularly this year with such an outpouring of support, and the caution being that sometimes partners are very well intentioned, but they're more work than they're worth.
That's right.
And so I that's always, when we go through these, we're going to go through the consent agenda again. I mean, I just always have a lot of questions because stuff pops up and I just don't understand it. And if I don't understand it, it's getting more and more difficult to vote for this stuff. So I think that's a great opportunity to start there with the partners and the schools to say, look, we know we need help. We really welcome the help, but also these are the ideals that we're looking for, and some of this stuff just is not going to work for us because we've got other stuff we need to do.
And to be sure, there's a lot more that we need to do with regard to coordinating MOUs.
Yeah.
Right now, they're stretched over 3 departments.
Yeah.
We take the lead in explaining the process and bringing people on. We also take the lead in tracking MOUs, which we need to gear up again with because there's been some changes there. And as you know, we've probably got some partners that really need an MOU that don't have one, or that need to re-up an MOU. And in order to re-up the MOU, we have to do exactly what you said, and that is to make sure that they are serving a need and that they're being efficient in how they deliver.
Great. I'm glad to hear you say that. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Well, this is a fun one. This is marketing and communications, and in case you haven't seen our newest billboards, we have 2 campaigns running, and one is the Power of Pre-K. That's also running on television, radio, bus shelters. If you look at the columns, it'll talk about the windscreens, and those are basically those shelters that go around the buses. And we have the commercial currently running on the website. So if you have not seen that, please do take a look. These are out right now, and so is the radio, but we're also starting to launch Camp SLPS. And Camp SLPS is also getting a lot of traction because we're out earlier this year, and we're hoping that we can definitely move things forward with the marketing and communications. And we'll follow the same plan that you see there. Paid social media, over-the-top platforms. Those are platforms that do not go through the normal channels. They can be held on mobile devices, that type of thing. And Hulu is a good example of that.
I saw it on Hulu. It looked great. Okay, and I saw the billboard. So yes,
that's wonderful.
And
Thank
I have
you.
my friends that will take pictures and be like, "Look at y'all! Look at us!"
That's great. I know they'll be glad to hear that because these things are very, very new, and we are taking a lot of pleasure in watching the analytics because we do have very sophisticated analytics attached to all of these things, and we can actually tell when we're making a difference. When we do a now hiring campaign for human resources, we can tell when we're getting a bump in people that are going to the website. So those are the kinds of things we're working on, and certainly we're looking forward to seeing preschool numbers.
Yeah, that's why I think it's great that good friends of mine are seeing it because they're at the age where they have, are about to have children or have young children, and they're like, "Man, I just saw this program. Did you know about this?" And of course, I know about it, but it's good that it's on Hulu and platforms like that because it's going to reach younger families that are sometimes unaware of their options and what we have here in SLPS.
Right. And it's not in the presentation, but on our YouTube channel, we are working on ways in which we can boost readership, subscriptions, and those type of things, because we have the District, which is our podcast. And of course, we're putting up stories on a regular basis. So we hope to see some expansion in that area soon as well. Any questions?
So thank you to our pillar leads this evening. And they are working tirelessly to ensure that our comprehensive school improvement plan we're making the kind of strides that we want to make here in our school district. I do want to take a moment and acknowledge and thank Mr. Terry Bullock. He's in the audience this evening. He serves as our operations coordinator. He's been very intentional in ensuring that we are prioritizing our goals. You heard a lot of language around our key performance indicators and our key performance actions, and he is the intentional thought partner who is really supporting all of our pillar leads in the work that we're doing. So thank you, Mr. Bullock, and thank you to our pillar leads. President Davis, that concludes the presentations on the interim superintendent this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you all for your presentations. The next item on the agenda is the April consent agenda review. This is the opportunity to ask questions for board members on the April consent agenda, which will be on the next meeting. So there are questions about the April consent agenda. Ms. Cousins.
04-11-23-15. This is pillar, I don't see a pillar.
This is Aim High.
Aim High, Memorandum of Understanding for Aim High.
Okay.
You can, or you cannot?
Well, maybe we can submit questions in writing and get additional clarification on 15. I had a question, Dr. Smith Jr., I think this is you on 4/11/23/16, which is the sole source contract for Beeble. Could you just explain a little bit about what that is? I've heard you guys talk about it, but I don't know what it is.
Sure, and so it is like a resource that we use to provide a variety of opportunities for our scholars. If you've heard of like junior achievement, right? And so this is just an extension where we are able to provide additional resources at particular grade levels for around like post-secondary readiness, for extracurricular experiential learning opportunities. And so just having an opportunity to build this into our, like I'm pausing here because I'm thinking about moving away from the ESSER funding to this specifically, and it really is around how do we make sure that we create opportunities in schools that haven't had those specific opportunities in these particular areas that have been called out. So resources to support in college and career readiness, opportunities to support experiential learning opportunities, opportunities to support in those particular areas in those particular schools. But there will be something around ESSER 3 that comes your way as well that says we want to look to do this across K through 12.
So this is software licenses, so this will be something loaded on the laptops and iPads. And is it something that is then part of the curriculum? So will a class be using this in work, or is this something that's just made available to the students to use?
Two parts to that. So it's not a part of just the everyday, like we're allocating time during the day to be able to do that. It's just an opportunity to make sure that it's available, and then the teachers that are actually using it or the schools that will be using it will be building it into just a part of their rotation, if that makes sense.
Okay. And am I wrong, but on a smaller scale, has this been used in some classrooms or at some schools?
It has been.
Okay. I thought I saw that before. All right, thank you.
04-11-23-28. This may be Mr. Watson. This is the Missouri Central Bus. Mr. Watson, I know we had them come and present to us before. I'm really having concerns, and I want to make sure we have kind of a detailed plan as to what Missouri Central Plan of Action is going to be prior to the school year starting. I will hope that we can have something tangible, informative, at least sometime in, May or June, before school is out, so we can have a better understanding of what we're going into the new school year. I just cannot, and I don't feel comfortable with even moving forward with this until I think or feel that they have a better plan. Because what was presented to us just didn't seem like they were really in that direction of having a substantial plan to get us ready for the upcoming school year.
Understood. We'll provide updates to the board, to the superintendent.
I have a-
Ms. Sonia, yeah.
I had a question, but maybe these are two separate programs that I'm thinking of. But for the next one, 04/11/23/29, where it talks about getting Metro Transit to provide bus passes and tickets to eligible elementary, middle, and high school students, isn't there a city program called Go Something, but it provides bus passes for free to youth, I think at least up to 25 years old?
There is a program that's out there. I would have to follow back up with you all just to provide you that information. But part of that particular resolution is that we do have this agreement with Metro to provide bus tickets to whether it's an after-school program, extracurricular activities, things of that nature. But to your question and to your point, I'll follow back up with you with an answer. But there is a program that does exist that we do utilize, but I'll get some more information and provide it to the board.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because that program provides bus passes, so they wouldn't need it like per event, and I think it's for the full academic year, and it could possibly save us some funds and just make it more accessible for our students.
I do have a question on 2327, contract renewal with Enterprise Fleet Management. Now, what would this be paying for in the district?
So our fleet management includes our facilities, vehicles, as well as our safety and security vehicles. So I don't have the total number, but I think approximately, I would say that we're talking roughly about 60 to 70 vehicles that are under this fleet management with Enterprise.
Are we allowed to use any of those vehicles to transport students?
Safety and security does use some of these vehicles to transport students. And one of those vehicles is a 10-passenger van, I want to say, that we use to assist transportation whenever there's any bus concerns. Transportation Department will utilize these vehicles to transport students.
Okay, thank you.
I did want to point out while we're on this 4/11/23/33 to approve an agency agreement with St. Louis Public Schools Foundation. Ms. Cousins spoke with Mr. Douglas last week. I spoke with him this week. He sent over a revised agency agreement, and I haven't even sent that to you, Ms. Major, so don't let me forget. So there's still some back and forth on that, so we'll provide that hopefully by the next meeting for the board to review and ask questions about. But that's still an evolving situation.
Matt, can I ask a question? Okay.
Yes.
So would we be paying them $80,000?
I don't understand the $80,000 in this. That's a good question. So there's two agreements. Okay, Dr. Crapo has some answers. But traditionally we have an agreement that goes up to $40,000, which is to pay them to manage the school-based fund. That has been for many years part of a separate agreement that we currently have. What I think this is the agency agreement that we're still working on, but am I wrong?
So yeah, the $80,000 is really just that $40,000 since the MOU currently is covering 2 years. So the rest of this year and then next year, that's why it reflects $80,000. So it's continuing with the money that we are paying the foundation. It's really part of an employee that we're funding who manages some of the grants that we have, manages some of the dollars that come in.
So this item, though, am I wrong? This is for approval of the agency agreement that we've been talking about, and that includes the $40,000 fee, which we've had yearly agreements for, but the agency agreement, we haven't had one since 2018.
Correct.
Okay. And that's what, I still just got a new draft from Mr. Douglas that we're still going back and forth on. So I'll share that with
Okay.
everybody involved. I don't know who's all involved, but if you are, raise your hand. I'll send you an email.
Thank you, Dr. Crapo.
04, 11, 2335, and 2336, and I already know who this is, Dr. Bender. I think, is that Ms. Willis? I'm sorry, partnership. He's right. You got out of Pillar 5. Saved you, Dr. Bender. Urban Golf and North St. Louis Arts Council. I'm asking about this because I think this is, it's Pillar, I'm sorry, it's 04, 11, 2335, and 2336, but I think it ties in to what Mr. Davis was saying. We see these organizations come before us and we don't have full understanding or representation of what they're actually doing, the impact that they're actually having within the schools that they're servicing. So I'm trying to make sure I get a better understanding of what these two components are actually offering to the schools. I see it says urban golf, instruction on fitness, exercise, golf techniques for 100 students at Shaw and Gateway. You're not on, baby. You're not on.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's not mine, but it sounds like it could be, but I will take a look at that and get back to you on that. I'm not sure who forwarded that. Is there a name on that? It's probably not on the document you have.
No, I think if I pulled up board docs, I would find it. And actually, 34, 35, 36 both seem to be partnerships just with Shaw VPA and Gateway Middle School. So
I think
yeah.
they've used that term partnerships, and let me look into that for you and find out.
So that was my question as well. I'll just give it to you. But I was just wondering why they were focusing on those two schools particularly, and what district funds we're spending on that when we do have students in need in more northern schools and less affluent neighborhoods. So if we have an idea on why they chose those schools, and if we could possibly leverage them to offer services, if it's something that we deem is worth doing in those schools, how we could leverage them to maybe expand services to other schools that don't have the resources in the area.
And certainly we can provide support to whoever was the author of that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions about the consent agenda?
I have questions about 2313 and 2314, which are the exclusively Apple and the Dell. What are the determinations that do that? How do we choose those?
Ms. Deputy Van Noy, please.
So the Apple one is strictly a sole source because of the discount we get when we buy in packs of 10. If we would buy those at other organizations, we wouldn't get that discount. So we have bid that in the past, and it is a sole source.
But is there a particular reason we use Apple products instead of other kinds of tablets?
So when Apple first came out, and I want to say in 2011-12 is when we first had iPads in third grade. That was our third grade initiative because of the reading platform. And at that point, we chose Apple with the iPads for the elementary students. So we've maintained that now that we've gone pre-K to 8, since we already have established training and resources and apps that the Apple iPad supports. Did you have another question?
If we do this contract with Dell, can we get computers with batteries that last longer?
Yeah, batteries are difficult because you use them all the time. And to be quite honest, it's hard on a computer if the battery's full and you're still plugged in, so it damages those. So batteries are always a concern. We can swap those out and just buy batteries if we think we need to. But our plan right now is to refresh the specific teacher laptops that are now 3 years old because we are having battery issues with those. So we don't want to spend money on batteries to replace 3-year-old computers when we could get brand new ones with brand new batteries. Batteries are about $35, so we could certainly do that if we want to extend the life, but typically we only want to have 3 to 4 years on a specific desktop.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought it was you.
I tried to put
You
this on
try to avoid it as long as you can. Luckily, I have an amazing team who is texting me, no, it is us. They're going to make fun of me tomorrow, and I'm okay with that. The reason it is those two schools is those are our two 21st century schools. So they have special funding allocations, and that's why those two schools are the engaged schools with the golf and the 35 and 36.
So are those after-school programs?
Yes,
'Cause they're
21st century is after school.
Okay.
You have to apply. It's a federal grant.
So that funding is coming from federal grant dollars?
That is my
To
understanding.
partner with these
Is that right,
organizations?
Keitra? Do you know? I think, yes, it is federal grant. I was a 21st century years ago at Gateway. It's a federal grant, I'm pretty sure. I'll correct myself if I'm wrong.
Thank you.
Don't shake your head, cousin.
That's offline for you.
Any other questions about the consent agenda? We will move on to board reports, board committee reports. Start down on that end. Any board reports or board committee reports?
The Governance Committee has been in communication with Missouri School Boards Association regarding the HR audit that was done from the Council of Great City Schools and maybe starting with our policy revisions with our HR department. We are waiting to hear back on the timeline on that. And also as the representative to the MSBA for SLPS, I attended, I think it was March 6th. They had the nominating committee. They are in the process of electing new officers, and our delegates will be responsible for electing those officers. So anyone who is serving as a delegate on this board, I know it's been kind of, we're here and there, and it's just whoever happens to be at whatever conference, but keep an eye out for the candidates to be coming out. And then there is another board meeting for MSBA coming up April 21st. The LRA Commission meets tomorrow morning at 8:30. They are starting to resume sales after an overhaul of policies and working out some bugs. So anyone interested in applying for those should get their application in by the middle of the month. So ideally, we will start with the new policies next month.
I mentioned this last time, but there is a candidate forum put on by the the Parent Action Council, which is Thursday the 30th at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. It is all virtual, so go to the website to find that information to watch it virtual. And there's also information to submit questions in advance. It's being moderated by the League of Women Voters. There are 2 seats up on April 4th. Is that the election? April 4th. So there are 2 school board seats up on April 4th, and there's a candidate forum on this Thursday. As I mentioned earlier, I will be attending along with Ms. Jones and Ms. Cousins, the Consortium of State School Boards Association. We were invited to attend by the Missouri School Boards Association, and I'll be presenting with Melissa Randall and John McDonnell on Friday. This is their inaugural conference, and on the first day they have an urban school boards component of that, which Ms. Jones and Ms. Cousins will be attending. So we're very excited to see this new organization and if it can provide any benefit to us. It looks good so far. I have been just terribly remiss about having legislative committee meetings, and I apologize. A lot's been happening and nothing's been happening, so we'll just summarize it at that. But we will hopefully be resuming that well, we have to have it in April, and then the legislative session is over in early May, and we'll have something as a summary, but there is very possibly a lot of action coming up in the next month, so we'll have one, if not two, legislative meetings at a date to be determined.
I'm sorry, I do have one, Matt. There is a citywide public meeting Wednesday, March 29th, from 6 to 7:45 at Carondelet Park Rec Complex. We really need the community input. Please come support, spread the word. Again, it will be Wednesday, March 29th, 2023, from 6 to 7:45 at Carondelet Park Rec. It should be posted on our website as well. Thank you.
Any other board reports? Could I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
Ms. Henry?
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Ms. Sonier?
Yes.
Ms. Fowl?
Yes.
Ms. Jones? Yes. Ms. Cousins?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
We are adjourned.